Brad Simon, how are you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
Been good. It's been a while. I hadn't seen you in a while.
Yeah.
What's been going on?
Just running a business, trying to stay busy.
Yeah. Well, you and I have known each other probably a little while, a good 5-6 years, something like that. But really, I guess I met you right before you got the place open, and you were building it and all that. Which I don't know, how long has it been open now?
So this October will be 6 years.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So I want you to tell everyone about you before we get into the whole range thing.
Okay. So I am 47 years old, born and raised in Shreveport. For high school, went away to boarding school, came back home, went to LSU, had a really good time in Baton Rouge, so good that I came back to LSUS to finish my college career. Was a product of 9/11, so was finishing up my college when 9/11 happened, and after that, about a week or so later, went and enlisted in the Army. Did the delayed entry, so I was set to ship out in May of 2002. I went on a fishing trip in April of 2002 and kind of smashed my foot on a pylon offshore. So that delayed me a little bit, ended up leaving in August of 2002, and then started an almost 9-year career in the Army. Started out in the infantry, tried to go and do special things, got hurt again, ended up going to flight school, and ended up being a Blackhawk helicopter pilot and instructor pilot in the Army. Deployed twice to Iraq with the Army, and came home in 2011 after a short stint of being a flight instructor at the Army schoolhouse. Came home, and in 2000, before I left, I got my FFL for the first time. So I was selling guns and doing all of that. Put that kind of on hold when I joined the Army. Came back in 2011, and that's when I kind of really went forward with a plan to open the range. While I was deployed, I'd kind of look and see these different facilities opening up, and so I kind of drew plans on the back of a napkin. That's kind of how I spent my downtime, was just trying to figure out what to do. And so when I came home in 11, that's when I really started, put a business plan together, traveled around the country, looked at different facilities, kind of see what would work in Shreveport. As a young pilot growing up, and I would fly with other pilots in command, as you go to shape yourself as a future pilot in command, it's like, well, DJ does this, I like that. DJ does this, I don't like that. You kind of build what works for you. And so that's what I did with all these other facilities around the country, was I just kind of said, yeah, that'll work in Shreveport. Nope, we're not Dallas. That's not going to work there, and kind of fit together what I thought would be a good idea for Shreveport. And so after hearing no a whole bunch from potential investors and people that's, naysayers, it's not going to happen, it's not going to work, we finally opened the doors in 2018, and we're working on 6 years now.
Sweet. Well, you said, how did you... Was something you got into, like the fire? Were you passionate about firearms and Second Amendment rights and stuff like that before you got into the military, or was that something that?
So I was always avid outdoorsman. Loved to backpack and hike. Loved to hunt. Loved to shoot. All of that. And so there was very few people that were local gun stores in the area at the time, and nobody in 2000 was selling sound suppressors or silencers legally, or selling them in Shreveport. And so that's why I got my license and what they call your SOT, but basically the ability to sell silencers. And that's kind of what led me down that road. And then it just was a progression as somebody that liked to shoot, but there was nowhere to go shoot. There was a place over here in Bossier that had been around for years and years and years. It was poorly lit, poorly ventilated. It was every negative stereotype of a shooting facility that you would ever hear. That was what kind of led me to want to try and open something different. There was the first one of its kind was a place called Scottsdale Gun Club in Scottsdale, Arizona. And what they did was they were the first to go with what's the country club model, I guess is what you would call it. So take out the tennis courts and the golf course, input shooting range, but you still have high-end pro shop, customer service, and amenities like a country club, but it's for shooting. And so Scottsdale opened, and then they started to pop up around the country. And so I just kind of kept watching all of these open, and knew Shreveport was ripe for something like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, now, what made you make the decision to go into pilot? Like, what was that? Because that's something something also interesting. I've never had a conversation on here with a pilot in the military at all. Like, it's always been, the guys that have been on the ground and stuff like that. So what's the difference there? And then kind of what made you make that decision?
So prior to going to LSU, while I was at boarding school, one of the reasons I went away was I was born in '77. So when the first Top Gun came out, that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
I wanted to fly jets off aircraft carriers. And so my progression was go to a really good school, get my grades, get my test scores, apply to Annapolis, go to the
so
Naval.
that was already your plan.
Yeah, that was my plan. So I go to the Naval Academy and fly jets. Well, I had my congressional nomination from McCreary at the time, applied to the Naval Academy, but my SATs weren't good enough. And so I was given the option. They have a prep school that you can go and basically like do 2 plebe years in a row kind of thing. They get you ready to then come. And I was like, 4 years at boarding school, 2 years, no, I'll go a different route.
Yeah.
And so I went to LSU, and like I said, had a really good time, made the mistake of, in my freshman year, I lived in an apartment with a roommate, never lived in the dorm. I got a job working in a bar 3 weeks after showing up in Baton Rouge. I was just setting myself up for success right off the bat. After a semester, the school said, you need to take a semester off. Sat out a semester, came back. After that semester, the school said, you probably should take a year to rethink, do you really want to be here? It was at that point that I picked up the phone, called the parents, and said, I think I need to come home.
Gotcha.
So I came back to LSUS. I spent the next 4.5 years digging myself out of the hole that I put myself in for 2 semesters. But flying never left my radar.
Okay.
And so for those 4 years while I was finishing school prior to 9/11 actually happened, I would go and talk to the recruiter about once a month, once every other month. And what I wanted to do was go to the warrant officer track and fly helicopters. I'm sure you've heard all the rumors about recruiters and how honest they are with people and all of that. And so I actually ended up getting a pretty good recruiter. I won't say his name on here, but he was pretty good. The problem was nobody knows how to put kids through the warrant officer track because it's just totally different. It's so small of a community. It's so small of selectees that actually go through it, so none of them know how to do it. Well, right before I enlisted, they opened up a program that it was called 18 X-ray. So they take recruits straight off the street and then run them through infantry school, airborne, send them through a prep course, steer them up to go to the Q course, which is the course for the guys who become Green Berets. I've always been enamored with it. I said, let's give it a shot. So I ended up going to enlisting under that instead of going aviation direct. So went to infantry school at Fort Benning, broke my foot, got healthy enough, finished it, sat out for a little bit, waiting to go to airborne school to get healthy, went to airborne school, broke my foot again in airborne school.
Damn,
finished up to airborne school. It's basically it's the same injury, just I would never sit long enough to get healthy to go to the next phase. Okay. And so I got to Bragg, same thing, did it again. And so they med boarded me in the program there, and they're like, what do you want to do? Well, at this point, I enlisted when I was 25 years old. Our basic training platoon, after the events of 9/11, the average age was, I think, 23. And in our group, 7 of us had bachelor's degrees. 2 guys had a master's, and one of my good friends was working on his doctorate. So we weren't your average guys that were 17, 18 years old at basic training at Fort Benning.
Right.
But so a lot of us were in this same program, so we all moved up there. Well, anyway, so we get to Bragg. I'm getting med boarded, and I'm at 26 years old now. Like, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, we can put you on med hold for 6 months, get you healthy, and then you can start again. So I'm 26 years old. I'm in the best shape of my life outside of the foot. I'm sort of successful. I'm making times, but I'm not doing great. I said, I gave it the college try. I really wanted to fly helicopters before this, but I tried. And they said, well, put in your packet. So from Fort Bragg, under the command at the Special Warfare Center, I put in my aviation packet. From there, I went to Hawaii to 25th Infantry. I spent about 8 months there waiting to go through the process, and then I got picked up for flight training and got yanked back from Hawaii and sent to Fort Rucker to go to learn to fly helicopters.
And then you did that for how long?
So flight school was there for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. So they send you through primary training and then instruments. And then you go into your advanced airframe and basic combat skills and all of that. And that takes about a year and a half. It can ebb and flow. There's what they call bubbles between each phase of training. Sometimes the bubble is you finish one day, you start the next. Sometimes you sit for a month waiting for your next class date. I was pretty fortunate that we kind of rolled right along, but we were right there at the end getting ready to leave. My wife and I had already sold our house. Everything's packed. All our stuff's gone. We're ready to head to Texas. And I get handed orders, you're staying here for another 6 weeks for this other class. So my wife and I, who's 7 months pregnant, 6 months pregnant, and our 2 dogs and 2 fruit trees that we had left moved into a hotel room for 6 weeks and waiting to finish up this class. And then we went to Fort Hood, where I spent the next 5.5 years of my Army time.
Got you. Flying helicopters.
Flying helicopters with 4th Infantry Division. Almost had a chance to go fly relief for Katrina, but as walking out the door with my duffel bag, I get a call that I got bumped for a guy that had like 2 more hours than I did. So I didn't get to do Katrina relief, which was a disappointment. You know, being in my home state, I wanted to go do that.
Yeah.
But then from there, we deployed twice, got promoted a couple times along the way, and then came back after the second deployment and got orders to go be an instructor at Fort Rucker, teaching guys to fly the Blackhawk.
What would you think? What would you tell someone who was, I guess, interested in going that route? Like, just 1, joining, 2, pilot.
If aviation is your thing and that's what you want to do, I mean, I dollared it up, and it's somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple $1 million worth of training that I received doing it. It's definitely the route to go. It kind of depends. I hit it at just the right time. So there's a local company, Metro Aviation, that's owned by the Stanberry family, who my family's known for a long time, and actually ran into Mike Stanberry at the Cub before I was leaving to go to flight school. And I asked him, I said, can I get a job with you guys when I get back? He's like, oh, you Army pilots, y'all never have enough time. Well, this was really pre-war. I mean, it had started, but it hadn't really kicked off as far as Iraq goes. Afghanistan was going on, but before that, guys would get a couple 100 hours in a career. We'll flash forward to the Army in Iraq. Now we're flying 8-9 hours a day. I'd come home with 900 hours after one tour, which is more than most Army pilots got in an entire commitment that they served. I think now we're on the back end of that, so guys aren't getting the flight time that they used to.
Gotcha.
But the training, you're not going to get they just increased it. It used to be a 6-year commitment to the Army if you went through flight training. Now it's a 10-year commitment from the day you pin your wings. So you owe the Army 10 years of your life, which for most part, my decision when I got out at almost 9 years was I hadn't crossed over that 10-year threshold. So I wasn't on the downhill to 20. If you're at 10, and that's after you pin your wings and you've already got a year or 2 behind you from schooling and everything else, now you're sitting at 12, 13 years. You'd be a fool almost at that point to leave. So you're going to get your 20-year career. And then from there, there's all kinds of things. I mean, the airlines are still gobbling up Army aviators. AirSense is AirSense. So once you can get into the air, they can teach you the differences of flying a plane or a helicopter. I think I've got 5 or 6 friends now that fly for the airlines that were rotor wing guys. They go sit second seat in an airplane. And now one of them's flying internationally from Germany to New York twice a month, and it's got a pretty good life.
Yeah. So you just, so if someone were to do that, I guess you would just say it opens up opportunities to other things.
Yeah.
Other than just that. I
mean, if you just want to go fly helicopters, just to get your private, I think you're looking at somewhere around $60,000. That's a lot of money just to do it. But then now you got it. Well, now you got to go instruct, or it's a little bit different. You go fly tours. Fixed wing guys can go fly banners, and there's other things they can do to pick up time. In a helicopter, you're either going to be flying tours in the Grand Canyon or stuff like that, or flying and taking pictures, but you're not getting real jobs until you have a minimum of anywhere from 500 to 1,000 hours, depending upon who it is. You start looking to fly offshore, and the requirements are even greater there. And then it's not only total time, but most of all those aircraft are turbines, so you got to have a set amount of turbine time. And then they want so much night time. Now everybody's flying night vision goggles. You got to have so much night vision goggle time. If you want to get specialized and fly out west, doing sling loads, you got to have long line time. And so all of these things start to add together. And so you can do it if you can go to the Army and spend 10 years in the Army and make a pretty decent wage. You get flight pay, and you're a warrant officer, which is the greatest rank in the military anyway. It's not a bad way to go if ultimately your career goals are to fly.
That makes sense. Now, what's the difference in flying in like a controlled airspace here versus being deployed and constantly potentially being shot at? And like, what's that like? I mean, what's that look like as far as like from takeoff to land?
So controlled airspace is you take off. If I'm on an instrument flight, I'm going on the altitudes and the routes that I'm told. So it's pretty much straight and level. It's mundane. I'm just making sure systems stay where they're supposed to stay. Over there, it was different. Our first go around, it was still the wild, wild west. You know, small arms were there. There was the surface-to-air threat. So we would be 200 feet or below everywhere we went. The thought was they can't see us, they can't shoot us. Flash forward to the second round, and now that we've won the war and it's all about hearts and minds at this point, they wanted us up. There was no more man-pad or surface-to-air threat. It was just small arms and the like. So we had a 2,000-foot hard deck. It was pop up to 2,000 feet, go to where we're going, and then drop back down, thinking that we're out of the range of small arms. Yes, we did what we were told.
Right.
I mean, at low, it's much better. I mean, that's you pick up and you're using terrain and buildings and trees and all kinds of things to mask you, and it's a whole lot more flying that way.
Really?
Much more fun flying.
I mean, I would say it definitely. I just feel like when you said that's the route to go if you're wanting to train to make that your career, it seems like no matter if you're doing it in controlled airspace or deployed somewhere, you're going to get a lot more experience, I guess, and maneuverability and stuff like that. And
that's the thing. I mean, doing the combat environment, and not that we were exceeding limits or standards or anything else, but you're learning what those limits of the helicopter are.
Right. Versus just flying to spec, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in training, like what we would teach kids at the schoolhouse is you pick up and we're just flying traffic patterns and all of that. And they're learning this is what a proper approach looks like, and this is what straight and level and maintaining altitude, heading, and airspeed and all of that. And that's great, and you need to have all of that. But knowing that I can snap this thing over into a 60-degree roll, that's the limit, but how quick can I get there and how quick can I return? You learn the limits of the aircraft a lot more.
Yeah.
When we went over the first time, we had the 10 most bastardized aircraft, our company did, in the entire fleet. One of our aircraft they brought back from Honduras, and when they recovered it from Honduras, there was grass growing in the chin bubble of the helicopter. Fortunately, we had a fantastic battalion commander that got us. We were a brand new unit. They just stood us up. Here's these 10 pieces and our maintainers got them working. Our battalion commander got us all ready, and we went. And going back now and looking at the statistics of what our unit did over there, just in people moved, hours flown, the limited amount of downtime that we had, the rapid return of aircraft that were run through maintenance and back, I mean, just on and on and on. We did a phenomenal job. We didn't lose an aircraft, and we took 10 of the worst. But having those airframes, and as old as they were, we were really forced to finesse these aircraft. The newer ones had better engines, they had more power, and so you could just kind of yank and go. Where you get over into the desert, we're hot, it's heavy, they put the ballistic panels in, you got 11 guys in the back. We had to really kind of work our power margins, and it taught, there again, nothing that we would have ever seen stateside.
Exactly, yeah.
But here we're having to learn what are those limits of the airframe because it's so old, and it taught us a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it seems just thinking about that, it just seems like if that's the experience you want to get, that's probably the best you're going to get. You know what I mean? As far as like.
And I mean, you get to fly. When I was flying, it was an $8 million aircraft. The new Mike models, I think, are like $30 million aircraft, all glass cockpits, great maintenance. Like I said, the warrant officer rank is the greatest rank in the Army. Everybody leaves you alone, and it's nice.
Yeah. Well, so you get back here, you get this going, and it's interesting because it's like right when you guys opened it, it's like there's been this huge controversy about arms and, you know, concealed carry versus open carry and all this stuff. And it's like you open right around the same time of, you know, all that going on. And then the shortage of the scare of the shortage of firearms and ammunition and stuff like that. Like what's that been like kind of riding that, I guess, dealing with the day-to-day, not knowing what's going to happen with regulations and government and operations of your facility once there's multi-million dollars invested into it and opening?
So we opened in fall of 18. 19, we're still brand new. Try to get the word out, marketing, all of that. November of 19, something pops up. People start getting sick. They don't know what it is. Come spring of 20, COVID is in full force. Everybody's shut down. Things are going nuts. Well, under the CISA guidelines, we were deemed essential, so we stayed open. But we kind of self-regulated, trying to kind of weave our way through what's going on. So, we've got 19 lanes. We shut down every other one, so there was 6 feet between everything. In reality, with the ventilation system that we have in the range, there probably was no safer place to be at all than our place there. But so we kind of did that. We limited the amount of people in retail. We took our classes from 32 to 10, and we went through all of that for about 3 or 4 months. And then finally one day I looked around, and I've got these groups of people, and I could fill up every single lane, and went and read the guidelines. We're essential. We don't have to do any of these things. And at that point, we opened up. We still cleaned stuff. We did all of the things that we were supposed to do, but we opened up, and by about summer of 2020, we were killing it. Nobody had anywhere else to go. They had discretionary money from the government. They weren't working, so it was just like, what are we going to go do today? Well, the range is open. Let's go to the range.
Yeah.
We went from that to 21, kind of read a little bit. 22, things were starting to open back up. People were going back on vacations, and so it dipped off. And now it's just kind of this, what exactly is normal? What does normal look like? Because when we opened, it wasn't normal because we were brand new. Then we went through COVID, and then the downturn of COVID. Then we went through election season, so it's just kind of been all of these things of what's normal.
Yeah.
And we're still trying to find that out. Like you said, with the passage of constitutional carry, during COVID, we were doing classes. I mean, every class, once we opened back up from 10, it was 32, 32, 32. Well, then word of constitutional carry finally getting a chance to come through, then we went from 32 to 15. And then we're like, it's definitely going to pass 2 or 3. Now that it's passed, we're still back to about 15, 20 out of the 32 that we can fit in a class. So classes are good. Our point now is just trying to educate people on the benefits of, do you do constitutional carry? Do you do concealed carry with a permit? What are the differences?
What's the difference? Yeah.
So
explain it to me, because honestly, I'm not well read in this, and there's a lot of arguments all the time. I really don't know what the hell's going on.
When it originally passed, the actual SB 1, which was the bill that passed constitutional carry, there was pretty clear distinctions between the two. Since it passed, there's been a couple acts. Act 37 came out and did away with it. But so basically, with a permit, you have reciprocity across multiple states. You can carry into an establishment that serves alcohol. You can't go into a bar, but take a Chili's or any of your chain restaurants that have the restaurant around the perimeter and then the actual bar in the middle. You can sit around the perimeter, but you can't go into the bar. The 1,000-foot buffer zone around schools and no-gun areas, you can transit through those areas with a permit. Those are pretty much the 3 big distinctions. There was SB 2, but I'll get that to in a second. Without the permit, you cannot transit through the 1,000-foot zone. So you have to actually walk around it. You can't go through it. Act 37, which was a bill that passed after SB 1, did away with the alcohol restriction. So now, under constitutional carry, you can still walk into an establishment that serves alcohol. Can't go into bars, but you can go into restaurants. So that took away that one difference. And then you don't have reciprocity. Texas has constitutional carry. Arkansas has it. Mississippi has it. I've talked to both judges, lawyers, and law enforcement in all 3 of those states, and none of them are in agreement that outside citizens can carry constitutionally inside of that state. Okay. So if they don't know their own law, how is the average person supposed to know from an out-of-state? But if you have a card and we have reciprocity with them, then you can carry in those states.
Okay.
The really only biggest difference outside of that is in the state of Louisiana, and other states have the same thing, is if you go to buy a firearm, if your concealed carry permit is in good standing, we can use that as your background check. You'll still fill out the form, the 4473, but we don't call it into the FBI. We'll check your card with the Louisiana State Police. Yep, it's still in good standing, and then you're good. You can walk out with it. So it speeds up that process. And then lastly, mentioned SB 2. So that was a rider bill that was passed behind SB 1, trying to offer, as the politicians called it, a bone to some of us instructors so that we don't lose revenue. That if you are what's called an approved person, and that's the language in the bill, meaning you have a concealed carry card. Let's say you get into an altercation, you have to draw your firearm to defend yourself or your family, and you end up shooting somebody. Prior to the 4th of July, when all this went into effect, The law said you were good. It was a clean shoot. You acted in self-defense, no problem. But the guy you killed or wounded him, paralyzed him, whatever, they could still come back and sue you civilly. Even though he was in the wrong, he can still come back and sue you. Under the new law, SB 2, if you're this approved person, you have immunity from civil liability if you acted in accordance with the law. So if the law says it's a good shoot, even though I paralyzed or killed your loved one, he was trying to rob me, kill me, whatever, I have civil immunity. Now, we'll see whether that stands up to challenge, because I'm sure it's going to be. I find it weird that you can offer this level of protections. You and I get in the same altercation, but you have a card and I don't. I can be sued, but you can't. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't know how that stands up.
Yeah, and we probably won't find out until that issue arises, I'm sure. If someone challenges it, right?
Yeah.
Which is scary in itself.
Yeah.
But another reason why you should just get your permit and take your class and keep that thing updated yearly.
Well, and you mentioned that. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is whether you go constitutional or you actually take a class and get a permit. The biggest thing is training.
Yes.
So, we offer a class that we've been doing it since before constitutional went into effect. We call it the concealed carry fundamentals. And what that class does, the concealed carry class, is our curriculum is mandated by the state. You've got to cover an hour of this. You've got to cover 30 minutes of this. Child protection or child prevention. You've got to talk about the nomenclature and parts and pieces of a bullet. Child prevention has a purpose. Average person doesn't need to know what a primer is, they need to know this thing goes in and it goes bang. But so there's a lot of material in the concealed carry class that is completely useless, but we have to teach it. Our fundamentals class goes and says, this is how you select a holster. This is the garments that you wear, how you change your dress. This is how you draw from a holster. This is how you reholster. You said we'll get to Trump in a little bit.
Oh, dude, let's go, because that's the next topic.
Clearly, some people need to be trained on how to reholster a firearm.
Well, she got wasn't she? Well, she's that one lady we're talking about, Secret Service, but the what happened today, right? She said the
director resigned.
The director resigned. But what do you think about this whole scenario? Because look, man, I never touch any of these things because honestly, I'm just not the person to be talking about them, right? I'm not anywhere in that realm when it comes to firearms or politics or anything, but it is an interesting topic of conversation because people have questions and a lot of people have suggestions and opinions, and most of them don't know what the hell they're talking about. I've had some conversations off air with some people who are skilled in tactics and stuff like that, and there's look, there's a million ways of why the scenario could have happened, and it's not necessarily what it is being shown to be. So what do you think?
I mean, I don't get into conspiracy theories, but it seems that there's a whole lot of anomalies of, the dude was 130 yards away with a rifle that is fully capable of shooting much further than that, even in incapable hands. So 130 yards is a chip shot.
Yeah.
The fact that they say that was not in the protected zone or in the, however they want to define their area, if he's on an elevated position and a chip shot away, that should have been inside of the security zone.
I agree.
The fact that the president was supposed to speak, former president was supposed to speak an hour before, didn't come on a stage till an hour after he was supposed to, and this guy had been spotted and was milling around for quite some time and in view for 5 or so minutes before anything was done. I don't know.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, back to the holstering thing and the training. Like how does something like that happen? You think that's just these people are put into place? We haven't had they haven't had the proper training, or they haven't been in a high stress scenario to where it looked like she was rattled maybe or something, and
yeah.
So what does that look like?
I mean, I've been through training that I pay for and go to myself, and the reholstering, it's not that hard.
Right.
You take a minute, you look down, you watch it go into the holster, and it's done. I don't know. It's clearly she's not been through any classes that required it.
Well, that and my only thought was, okay, well, this just happened. You don't know what the hell's going on, and you're a little taken back, and you're not mechanically all there, because of these things, traumatic, whatever.
Well, so I've been through classes, and some instructors will say, you don't look at the holster, you know where your holster is, muscle memory guides it back in. I've been with other classes that you don't holster your firearm until the threat is complete, and at that point, there's no reason to sit here and alert and look around. Her environment at that time, they didn't know was there a second shooter and all that, so it's kind of in that middle ground.
Yeah.
To me, if it's in that middle ground, then the gun's going to stay out.
Yeah.
But if it is a point where we're going to reholster, then take a second, guide it back into the holster. There's statistics that show majority of firearms happen, or accidents happen, when the gun is either coming out of or back into the holster. I'll say that we had an incident at the range. Fortunately, there's only been one, but that's exactly when it happened, was the gun was going back in the holster, wasn't paying attention, and a round went off. Just take a minute and look and guide it back in.
Yeah. I think that's what's not talked about enough. The argument's always around, should you have them or should you not? But there's never an argument about, well, if you do, now you have them, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you can have them all day long. And there's that old country son of a bitch everywhere that says, well, what's up, blah, blah, blah. Well, hell, all you do is shoot at deer once a year. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, you sight your rifle in September, and you don't touch it again until next September. I mean, if you shoot.
Or if they even do come and sight it.
Right.
Again.
Right.
It was on last year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was fine. I was on last year. They missed a deer. Okay, well, maybe we need to check it. That's not training at all when it comes to personal protection or protecting your family or anything, as far as concealed carrying or anything like that. And believe it or not, I mean, that's a lot of people. And if it's not, it's the other people that, and this is just from my experience, way more than I do, but like just the people I know and I'm around and in our network, in our area, it's like there's the people that have that never shot it, or maybe they shot it one time when they got it, so they weren't. Somebody made them get it. They shot it, so they weren't scared of it. Never touched it again, and they have it. It's in their purse. It's in their glove box. It's right there next to them, whatever it may be.
Well, that's the majority of them. So we've talking to a guy the other day. Bought a gun from me 5 years ago. Hadn't shot it yet. Sitting on his bedside table, but he still hadn't put the first round through it. When we have our concealed carry classes, I don't make it to everyone, but I at least try and step into 90% of them. I just pop my head in. Main thing is, thank you for choosing Red River Range. You have an option of where you can and can't, get your training from. 2, you got to practice. And I asked the class, so poll the audience of the 20 students that are there. How many of y'all are initials? How many are renewals? And it's usually about half and half. And then I go and I focus on the renewals. I said, of the renewals, when was the last time you shot? And 1 or 2 will say last week, last month. And then the question is, how many of you are renewals that haven't shot since you qualified 5 years ago? And about 90% of the renewal hands go up. So you're carrying a gun to protect yourself, but yet you haven't shot it in 5 years. You've probably never drawn from a holster. So when shit hits the fan and everything goes sideways, can you even get to your firearm in an efficient manner to put it into the fight? There's statistics that the average person can cover 21 feet in like 2 seconds. That's a long distance. You think, 21 feet, I got plenty of time. 2 seconds goes by like that. And when you start putting people on a timer and that beep goes off and then it beeps again in 2 seconds, like, well, that was only like a half a second. No. That just shows you how fast it is. And the threat that you thought was far enough away is now in your grill. So you got to get training. And then I advise them, you don't have to come and shoot a lot. Come once a month, twice a month. Shoot a box of ammo. You don't have to come and shoot 300-400 rounds, because at that point it's diminishing returns. You're accentuating your bad habits. You're tired. Come with a plan. Shoot 50 rounds. Say, today I'm going to do offhand only. And I'm going to shoot 50 rounds, center mass, working on accuracy, offhand. Next day, come and say, I'm going to shoot this drill or that drill. And, whatever it is that they want to work on, but you come on a regular basis and you shoot with a purpose, not just to poke holes in paper as fast as you can. I mean, I've got a 15-year-old right now that is going, he's done driver's ed. He turns 16 in a little while, driver's license time and all of that. Look at all of the effort we put into these kids to get a driver's license. To me, a gun is no different than a car. And I can say this from the analogies that the anti-gunners want. Well, bad guy with a gun did a bad thing. Let's take all the guns away from people. Well,
bad guy's still going to do bad things. He's still have a gun.
But
or he's going to get it somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, guy got a DUI and killed somebody. So do we take all the cars away from everybody because of the one?
Right.
No.
Yeah, I get it.
We teach them and we set things. Now, I'm not saying there's nothing in the Constitution that talks about driver's license and cars. There is about guns. the analogy is the training aspect. If we're going to teach these kids and go through all this, and they got to drive this many hours and do all of that in order to get a license, then the responsible gun owner should take it upon themselves that if I'm going to carry a gun, own a gun, then I should at least make the effort to get training and reps with it so that I can be proficient with it. I can be safe with it. That's just, to me, common sense.
Do you think that everyone should have some type of requirements to buy one instead of how it sits now?
No, I think it should be more open than it is now.
Do you?
I mean, the whole thing of like, can a felon own a gun? I think there could be some room there. Violent felons, no.
Right.
Dude that's got a felony for a marijuana charge, so many times or whatever. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I can't break down all the felonies.
Yeah.
But nonviolent guys, yeah, they should, after time served, they've been rehabilitated, they should be able to get their rights back. But as far as purchasing anything else, I mean, the Constitution says I can have it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's just something that's, dude, there's a constant battle over this. And my thing is, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have to say in the fight because I'm not on one side or the other. It's more like I'm for guns. I have them. I've always had them. Grew up shooting. I grew up the old school way of shooting a beer can, and then
yeah.
Grandpa showed me how to reload bullets and all those things. So that's where I come from. That's my background. It wasn't on a range. And it wasn't. I didn't have access to that type of training or anything like. So it's just kind of figure it out. And then learn awareness,
But there again, you go back in those days, you should be old enough to at least have seen the outset of it. Guns were carried to school. There was a rack in the back of the truck with a shotgun.
Everybody, dude,
on
we
it.
had them. We had them. Yeah, we had them in my country school. Yeah.
And there weren't school shootings then.
Yeah. No.
There were school shooting teams. Byrd High School had a range in the basement of the school. And so while you may have been shooting beer cans in your backyard or out on the property, it was something that was done on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And so there was familiarity with it. It may not have been formal training.
Oh, that's what we were doing. We were saying, hey, man, what do y'all want to do this week? Well, let's go shoot. Let's shoot 22s, whatever.
Yeah.
And literally all the time.
You were getting training.
Yeah. It just wasn't.
Training.
It wasn't formal training,
Right.
but it wasn't ideal. But at least I had some sense of how to use a weapon, how to load it.
Yeah.
When to shoot, when not to shoot, distance awareness.
Well, nowadays it's come completely full circle, or it's the pendulum swung the other way. That say what you want about the NRA, one of the greatest programs they've got was the Eddie Eagle program, and that they went into schools and it was child prevention and stop, don't touch, get an adult, run away, all of that, and it was basically introducing kids to guns. We did there's a program running on one of the local news stations about guns in America. And it's covering all sides from the DA to the coroner to the crime lab, pro-gun, anti-gun, all of that. And one of the things I brought up with them is you have an option as a citizen. There's 400-something million guns floating around the United States by most averages. A little less, a little more, depends. There's 360 million, 350 million people. So there's more than one gun for every person.
Yeah.
You can choose not to be you can choose to be anti-gun or a non-gun person, not even anti. But if you're naive enough to think that your little Timmy or Sally is not going to come in contact with a firearm, you're very naive. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And then it's, do you want to be the one that's going to teach little Timmy or little Sally about firearm ownership and safety and all of that? Or are you going to let their friend who found dad's Glock because he didn't lock it up teach them? And I would much rather be the parent that is teaching my kids about it. And then as you teach them and start them young, I mean, I started mine 5 years old with a BB gun. 6 or 7, we moved to a 22. 8 or 9, we moved to a 20 gauge. And it's just a progression of slightly bigger, more recoil, bring them into rifles, teaching them how to hunt, all of that. So now they know how to operate it. They know how to safely check it. They know how to clean it. They know how to load it, unload it. They know all of that. So mystery's gone. They're safe. I trust my kids, but I don't know that I trust the others.
Yeah.
And like I said, I would rather be the one teaching my kids. So teach your kids.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And you have this thing too, to where like, look how many kids are playing Call of Duty, running around, never touched a gun, don't know the repercussions of using a weapon like that.
Yeah.
Or how they operate other than unlimited ammo on this video game. You know what I mean? Like, and also like recoil, sights. Like you're not, like, it's not that easy to shoot as it is on a video game. I'm sorry, it's not. There's a lot of other variants. It comes into play when that's the case. But What I'm getting at is if that's their only form of training, it's not that great of
No.
of any type of training. If that's the only thing they know when they see weapon is that game they played.
Well, and then, I mean, that brings in a whole another argument of do the video games and what they're doing and the desensitization to.
Exactly.
And again, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but to me, if you're constantly exposed to it, it's got to have some effect.
Yeah, I completely agree. If there's you just continuing to just kill someone on a video game and nothing happens, to respawn or whatever it may be, like who knows what that could do to someone, how they take that information in or process something like that happening. Well, let's talk about the range, man, because I've been there, haven't shot there yet, but we're going to fix that here soon. I actually need to get a new pistol. I just hadn't decided on what I want. But let's talk about it, like full scale, what you offer.
All right, so we are indoor shooting range. We've got 3 separate shooting bays. 2 of them are 25-yard, we call pistol bays, just because they're only 25 yards, but you can shoot rifle in those. There's 8 lanes in each of those, so 16 25-yard lanes, and then we have Louisiana's only indoor 100-yard rifle range. The rifle range is rated up to 50 BMG. We have a Barrett 50 cal rifle that people can rent and shoot. If you've never shot one, it is an experience. It's an even greater experience to shoot it inside of a 15-foot concrete box, because we joke and say you feel it in your toes, but no, you literally do feel it in your toes. All of the ranges are steel reinforced cast in place concrete, and it's 8 inches on the outside, 10 inches on the inside. There's rebar on 12-inch centers, vertical and horizontal, through all of that concrete. And so when the 50 goes off, there's a huge muzzle brake on the end of it that diverts all the energy back at a 45-degree angle out each side. Well, 7.5 feet one way is a wall, 7.5 feet the other way is a wall, and it's just like a pull shot. It bounces off the wall right back into your feet, and all of that steel turns into a tuning fork. So the rifle bay is on one side, you can be on the opposite side, and the other pistol bay, and you'll hear the steel ringing around the building from when the 50 goes off. The 8 lanes in the pistol bays, those are all rated up to 300 Win Mag, so you can shoot rifles in there. And then the thing that we're most proud of is our ventilation system. Like I was talking about during COVID, we have 100% fresh air system. Most shooting ranges, I think we were one of a handful when we opened, and since COVID, it's now become cost prohibitive to put the same model that we have in. So most ranges do a recirculation of air, especially a climate like ours, or super cold climates, that if you're trying to heat or cool 100% air, it just gets cost prohibitive the way they've traditionally been done. So they'll recirculate about 25% of the air, mix it with 75% fresh air, and then introduce that back into the environment. Well, that 25% air, being that you got lead and all the toxins from shooting, has got to be filtered and cleaned somehow. So you run that 25% through HEPA filters, scrubbing filters, pre-filters, post-filters, all of this, to then mix it and put it back into the environment. The problem is, even with all those filters, you're still putting lead and toxins back into the environment. So it's just a recurring and recirculating system. With ours being 100% fresh air, we bring in 100% outside air, we heat it or cool it, pump it into the space. It moves 75 feet per minute downrange, which takes all of the toxins and everything away from the shooter. We filter it on the exhaust side, dump it overboard, and then start the process completely over. What that gives the shooter is, OSHA recommends 3 air exchanges per hour in a surgical suite. We do 240 air exchanges per hour in the range. So it's
You're cleaner than a hospital.
We're cleaner than a hospital.
Yeah.
But one thing that made it affordable for us is, so we spent more money to oversize our equipment. And if you come and look at the range, I'm still amazed by this piece of equipment. I mean, it's the size of a freight car, is the air handling unit for the makeup air for our 2 pistol bays. I mean, I think there's more wiring in it than the space shuttle. And I go up on the roof and I look at it, it's huge. Well, we pump all that air in, and like I said, we oversized it a little bit. What we spent to oversize the equipment, after doing the math of traditional versus this 100% fresh air, we paid for in the first year by not having to buy HEPA filters and scrubbing filters and all of that. So we spent a little bit more on the equipment, but we saved it in filters. And so by year 2, we were already ahead of the game. One thing that we also did was the shape of our stalls are kind of an hourglass shape. If you know anything about like hydrodynamics, fluid dynamics, all that, there's a thing called Bernoulli's principle, or I'm sorry, not Bernoulli, but the Venturi effect. And as the air goes through, think of it like a water hose. You squeeze off the end of a water hose, what happens? The pressure picks up.
Yeah.
Same thing it does with air. Well, so as we squeeze the air through that hourglass, the air speeds up to get to the other side. So now we can turn our equipment down, run it at a slower speed, but still achieve that 75 feet per minute velocity downrange. And so the average facility had an energy consumption cost of about $25 per lane per hour.
Damn.
We're less than $3 per lane per hour with our equipment. So even though in the summer I'm paying about $8,000 a month to SWEPCO, it could be a whole lot worse.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. That's crazy. And really, if I'm anyone listening, and that just tells me you take this shit seriously.
Yeah.
And you care,
There's two things. I mean, the guests, when they come in, before we fire up the systems in the morning, you can walk on the range floor and it smells like a range. But once the system spools up and we're moving air, you walk in, you don't smell anything. I mean, whether the guy next to you is crop dusting beside you or whatever, you don't smell anything. So for the customer's endpoint, that's it. It's appealing, it's nice, it's cool. The hottest summer, it's 68 degrees year-round in the range. The real aspect is my guys that spend 8 hours a day on the floor and are constantly in and exposed to that environment, having a system like this means that they're taken care of and not overly exposed to lead. Now, it's still on them. They have to wash their hands and not put a dip in when they haven't washed their, simple precautions that they have to take, but it keeps them safe.
How many instructors do you have?
Official instructor, I've got one as the enlisted instructor.
Got you.
That said, all of my range safety officers, for the most part, are either an NRA certified basic pistol and or rifle instructor. I've got former law enforcement that have been instructors with law enforcement, and then some military that have done instruction time with military. So really, any of our guys are an instructor. It's just which credential do they bring.
I got you. And from there, what do you offer? So if I'm walking, if I meet you off the street and I say, hey man, tell me, I'm interested in shooting, what do you offer?
From a training standpoint, or
just in full portfolio here?
So like I said, we've got the 19 lanes.
Okay.
We rent firearms.
Okay.
We've got over 100 different firearms that you can rent, everything from the most popular handguns that are on the market now. So if you're in the market and want to buy, you can come and try before you buy.
That's a huge selling point for me, because I don't know what the hell I want next.
No, I mean, you're going to go buy a car. You want to take it for a spin first.
Right.
We have too many people that come through and they bought a gun at one of the big box stores and they shoot it for the first time. Like, wow, this is a piece of shit. I hate it. So you can prevent spending $700 on something that you're going to hate. Come in, try it. We'll sit at the counter with new folks. What are you looking for? Concealed carry, something just for sport and plink. Is it going to sit on the bedside table or in your car? What are you going to do with it? And we'll kind of figure out what size they want. And you can handle them and go, all right, I like it, I don't like it. Now you found one that I like the feel of. Take 2 or 3 guns out on the range. You go and you shoot them, and now you can compare them. We've had some people that shoot one and they buy it. Some that are a bit more, indecisive or more a discerning buyer, and they come in with a journal and they say, today I shot the SIG 365 XL, and they put little notes about what they liked about it. And then the next day they shot this. And by the time they've got a journal full of all the different ones, and they've shot so many they can't remember what, but they can look back at their notes and go, okay, yeah, that's the one I like, and then they buy that. We've got machine guns that you can rent, belt-fed machine guns, so you can go fast and have a lot of fun. We've got a gunsmith on site. He's got a master armorer that helps him, as well as an apprentice gunsmith. So we do everything outside of bluing guns or serious machining. We don't have a CNC. I mean, we can do milling and barrel threading and stuff like that, but like slide cuts and those kind of things we don't do. We've got the training academy. We teach everything from the concealed carry course, the concealed carry fundamentals. We do emergency medicine stuff. If we're going to teach you how to poke holes in things, we're going to teach you how to plug holes in things as well. We do youth safety classes, carbine classes. We run league nights. We do USPSA matches once a month. We do an outlaw rifle match once a month. We've got a fishing pond out by the archery area. We do have a 6-lane outdoor archery area that's out to 50 yards. Shoot regular bows and compound bows and crossbows. By the pond that's stocked with fish, we got bass and brim in the pond, so a little dock. Members can fish for free. Non-members, it's $10. That'd help us pay for the fish food to keep them fed. And then we just took on a line of hunting and fishing kayaks. And so by the pond, we got all those staged. So if somebody's in the market, we can roll one of the demos out, put it on the pond, and they can take it for a test paddle. Or you can put power on them so they can see what it's like with a trolling motor. Or there's some that take pedals. They can pedal one around. If you want to catch a fish out of it, see how fishable it is, you can do that. And now we're just trying to kind of expand and kind of grow into different areas. With the kayaks, it's been interesting because of all the kayaks we've sold so far, not a single person had ever heard of Red River Range. But every single one of those persons was a hunter or shooter that enjoyed it. They had just never heard of us.
Right.
So now we're reaching a whole nother market through an avenue that we nenever would have known
by
taking on this line of boats.
Yeah, you wouldn't think. And that's a huge market too. I watched those videos, those guys, and I've been seeing the kayak stuff forever. My brother's actually big into that, but the guys that do it in the ocean, which is a whole other thing, dude. It's like, and I've been watching the ones where they do the jet ski. Have you seen the jet ski fishing yet? That shit's cool. I want to try that. I think
some rigged out jet skis.
Yeah, dude. Like I had no idea. Like they have those things tuned up. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I didn't know you guys were doing that either. So that's interesting to hear. Yeah, man. I think it's something that was well needed and glad it's here, but I also think there's not enough people know about it, you know. And I've been saying I need to get you on, man. I'm glad we finally got to catch up because honestly, I want people to know about it, but also if you're going to have a gun in your hand, I want you to know how to use it. You know what I mean? And you're the guy to tell them those, and you're the guy to go visit if they want to learn more about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, training. I mean, there's nothing in the law that says you have to get it. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you have to get it. But if you're going to have a firearm, get some training. It's simple of how to load it, unload it, how to take it apart and clean it, proper grip, proper stance, proper sight picture, just some basic things. If you're going to carry a gun, then get a little bit more training. Like we talked about, how to get it in and out of a holster. When things go sideways and stress gets involved and your adrenaline gets going, you're going to revert back to muscle memory. And if you have none, then you're done.
Yeah.
So that's what we're there for.
Last question. SIG versus Glock. What's your opinion?
I would go SIG.
Okay.
We give Glock a lot of grief. They're great pistols. Ergonomically, I don't like the feel of it. But consider Glocks like the Jeeps of guns, like the old school CJs. If there was ever an aftermarket part made for any vehicle,
it's that one.
There's made for a Jeep.
Yeah.
It's the same with Glock. I mean, if a company's going to put a toaster on a firearm, they're going to put it on a Glock first.
Yeah.
The aftermarket support, holster selection, you can change every part, piece, and widget on a Glock. They're good guns. They're just, I don't like them.
I get that a lot. I've been hearing that a lot lately when I ask that question. All right, man. Well, that's all I got today, dude. I enjoyed the time with you. Any last plugs or anything you want to mention before we go?
RedRiverRange.com. We're on Facebook, on social media, Instagram. We do have the gun truck, so if anybody wants to go shoot pigs with a upfitted Jeep Gladiator with a turret and 2 mounted belt-fed machine guns on it, just let me know.
Sign me up for that. All right, dude. Thank you.